Hello, hello. Good morning. Welcome to our panel discussion titled Building Resilient Engineering Teams, Lean Practices During Lean Times. Rapidly shifting landscape, engineering teams are often asked to do more with less resources, tighter budgets, and ever-increasing expectations to deliver more, right? Resilience is no longer a nice to have. It's essential for survival and long-term success. So to talk more about it, we have a wonderful panel here, industry experts. We'll do a quick round of introduction and then dive right in. So my name is Jobin Kurivula. I'm the Global Head of DevOps and Service Management Practices at Adaptivist. At Adaptivist, we focus on transforming organizations, and we focus on key practice areas like DevOps, service management, cloud, and work management. How about you, Brian?
Yeah, so my name is Brian. I'm a CTO here at BoxUp. Basically, we sell shipping containers. We're in the middle of, delivering those containers. So it's logistics and technology, all of it together. We built all the platform that allows this to happen. Before this, I was working in my own startup called Spot at Home. It was kind of like a mid to long-term Airbnb. We grew a lot, and I had to go through a lot of processes that we will talk about today. So I think it could be interesting for you guys.
Sounds good. Joel?
Great, yeah. Hi, I'm Joel Cumming from Skywatch, CTO at Skywatch. We make Earth observation data simple for anyone to use. So if you wanted to buy a satellite image today, it's kind of hard. You have to call up a satellite company and commit to spending tens of thousands of dollars. But you can come to our platform, and for as little as $3, you can get your first satellite image. Or for $300, you can control a satellite and take a picture anywhere you want in the world. So we tried to make it simple for users, for applications to integrate this kind of data so that we can have machine-to-machine interactions. So prior to Skywatch, I've worked at a company called BlackBerry, maybe some of you remember. So it was a meteoric rise and a pretty fast fall from grace with the company. So my background is in data, and I also worked at a startup in Waterloo as well that had $1 billion valuation, a consumer messaging app called Kik. So data is in my background, and interested in hearing others' perspectives in this talk around data and other ideas how they can be successful in lean times.
Hi, I'm Melissa Young, SVP of Engineering at Vox Media, where I lead our engineering team across everything from data to advertising to the platforms that power our content publishing and everything across there. I've been in the media my entire career. I'm glad we've talked so much about storytelling because I also have a background as a journalist, transitioned into engineering and then management and then leadership.
I am Sandrine, President and CTO of Colostat. I'm the wild card because I'm not in tech, I'm in construction. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, and I lead a mechanical engineering department. But there's a lot of similitude that what I hear today. We do HVAC, so heating, air conditioning, and ventilation in buildings. And we do design builds at Colostat. So that means that we, for a client, design their system for their buildings. It's either new construction or existing construction. We have a strong tendency to sustainable projects. So I would say 90% of our projects are based on sustainability requirement for our client. I founded my own firm in 2016 for design building decarbonization project in buildings. And we've merged with Colostat and other groups here in Toronto to kind of grow the family and be able to do nationwide project for data center, indoor farming, just regular buildings, and have a great platform.
Well, no disrespect to anybody else here. I would like to start with a wild card here. So since you're from the construction company, when I was talking to you earlier, I was always curious about your dual role of leading a construction company, but also being a CTO in a company like that. So what does it mean for you, especially because since you have been through so many challenging times, for example, the COVID pandemic, right? What does resiliency mean to you, and how do you use technology to make sure that your teams are resilient?
It's really, that's where I'm the wild card. I nominated myself CTO. First, I thought technology is so important for the building industry. Like, it has changed dramatically in the past year. So I really want to be involved in choosing the right technology for the client and really using it in innovation. And as much as I digged in, I realized engineering team has to be very much protected and kind of cocooned for them to stay. So I realized design build is very not common in construction. Usually it's traditional. You have a consulting engineer and an installer. We bring everybody at home, and the fight is coming at home. But I realized that, like, you cannot have a good turnover in engineering. Like, the knowledge is so important to make the business work and make money and make building that function. While I'm sorry to say I love everyone and I want to keep everyone on my team, but the sheet metal worker, the pipe fitter, the electrician, there are more trades that are easily replaceable. So sorry, I want to keep everyone, but the engineering team is such a hard key of who we are and what we sell to the client that cannot be absolutely changeable. So we have to keep the team. So I basically, it was my own idea. I'm like, how do I protect my engineer? I remove them from the operation. So there's like the engineering team is totally offside the org chart. So I have the CEO, a CFO to report to me, and I'm the CTO on the side. I have the engineer, nobody can touch them. So budget cuts, any construction problem, any F-up on lawyer's team on a project that doesn't affect the engineer, they're protected by me. And that kind of structural change really gave them the signal, okay, somebody's understanding our role, and they flourish into this, and that structure, that visual structure of them being protected as well, gave them more room to try more, to innovate more, because building has been the same for 100 years. So we need to kind of innovate and let those very old soul try new things now. So in COVID, what happened is, in Quebec, the construction industry just shut for two months. So we were mainly back then in Quebec. So I did as everybody. I sent everybody home on chômage, and I was panicking. And then one of my clients called, and he's like, okay, those sustainability project has to still, happen one day. So keep your engineering team, and then we'll pay at the end of the day. We'll pay for the engineering team to continue functioning. So I was like, oh, thank God, I have a bit of a line of a business here for the world end happened, but I still have that. So I used that crisis to deepen our services within. So we used to sub-trade for drafting a technician, like a bunch of stuff that we would sub-trade. We built during that time all our capacity to be able to do the full-on engineering and the feedback loop within the department. So we do all the services at once, and we don't rely on anybody anymore. So that crisis totally beef up our team and beef up our ability to do project now.
That's very nice to hear. How big is your engineering team?
30 full-on signing engineer, and then drafting must be 20 people as well, and AKA all the things around. The engineering team of engineer, 30 people.
That's very nice. It's very commendable that you're protecting your team from all the changes that's happening. One way to build a resilient team, I guess. Moving on to Melissa. Again, media is another industry which is going through rapid changes all the time. And I remember you mentioning about the challenges of managing remote teams, right? How do you build a resilient team when everybody is working remote?
Well, I'm glad that we've talked so much about remote teams already. And if I can say something a little bit spicy, yeah. Right? In our last
media can be spicy.
Oh yes, definitely. We thrive on that. In one of the previous talks, when we saw the pyramid of high trust teams, and the top of that pyramid was oh, in person, I felt a little attacked because my entire team is remote and distributed and always has been. I've also worked in offices at different publications, small and large. But so my job here now is I feel very strongly about the fact that you can create a team that is high in trust just as much as an in-person team in a remote setting. And I want to convince you that having a fully remote team is actually a maximized opportunity to engender trust because of the way that you have to take your flexibility and communication to the next level. Of course, we talked earlier about also treating people as adults. Everyone that we hire is an expert. They're great at what they do. Give them the autonomy and the authority to make those decisions, and teach them how to collaborate, and then also let them live their lives. That's a step you can take to engender trust with the team. And when they do that, they know you're going to need that political capital later as a leader. They know that they can trust you. You can trust them. You're both making decisions in the same environment together. And then on the practical side, you have to have these very specific, intentional processes, documentation, and in order to function as a really efficient remote group. And where that comes in handy in resiliency is when you have to scale back, when people leave, you have these artifacts that people can turn to. You have the documentation. You have a process already in place for onboarding, for offboarding, and people can turn to that when they need to. And then the last thing, like, those are what everyone is already doing on their teams. But as a leader, you have to think about how you show up in those remote spaces. This is an opportunity for you to be so intentional. Every communication that you have, every touch point you have with the team is a choice. And that is a very powerful thing as a leader. When you show up in that room, it is your choice to be there. And people know that. I meet with my skip levels every other month, and that's a choice. I schedule that meeting, and then I have office hours where they can choose to meet with me, but of course, no one ever does that. You can't just set up the time. No one is gonna show up unless there's like a real problem. But you don't wanna wait for a real problem or an emergency, so you have to set up that space. And that's a signal to them, that's, as a leader, that you care, that you are making the time. If you show up to a meeting, you care about that issue. If you send out a communication, if you take charge of a project or a plan, that is a meaningful action, and they read into that, if not consciously, then subconsciously. And that's the relationships that you build that help you navigate the times when you have to come and tell the team, we have to do a reduction in force. We have to pivot our strategy to something else, not to use the word pivot again. A good pivot, we can really do it, I swear. But using that environment to the best advantage that you can as a leader is very, very important.
Yeah, you mentioned quite a few times intentionally doing things, making yourself available to your teams, and even Adaptive is a fully remote company, and our leaders try to do the same thing. Having these office hours, and making sure that everybody gets time to speak to the leaders. I think it's a wonderful strategy. All right, Joel, I'm going to move to here, changing gears here. You have worked at different types of companies. You already mentioned that during your introduction. Big companies like BlackBerry, obviously there's a story there. Moving to a startup like Kick Interactive, and then now playing the role of CTO at Skywatch. Have you seen noticeable difference in the way the engineering teams operate? How is the culture different? How does it impact the resiliency?
Yeah, I think certainly yes, big differences. And I think like culture really shines when things get hard. And obviously resiliency is how you react to things when they get hard. And so a couple of stories of anecdotes of when things got hard at these companies and kind of how the culture reacted to it. At BlackBerry, we had the fortune of growing extremely quickly. When I started, we had about 3 million people using BlackBerries, and at its peak, there's about 80 million people. So just this rocket ship. And hiring was challenging because you basically had a quarter to have an open rec out, and if it wasn't filled in that quarter, you lost it. So that was a top-down decision that made it challenging because you couldn't often work through all of the HR processes and recruiting processes in that time. So you end up hiring people that maybe, like we talked about before, aren't the top talent that you would have hoped for because you're limited by this kind of thing. So with that in mind, the company grows very quickly, and then things happen. So an example of a thing happening, we had, some of you may have used BBM back in the day. So BlackBerry Messenger, the way that you could text, very popular in Canada, a lot of other countries. And so there's this back and forth decision, do we go cross-platform with BBM? And so eventually the company decided to do that so iOS and Android users could now use BBM. And so this was like months and months of development work. Moving to the cloud, AWS was relatively new at that point. And so the big launch day comes. And we go to launch, and there's like millions of people that want to download this. And the whole thing comes to a crashing halt. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but internally there was a failure with our identity service. And it couldn't manage this load. It was used for other things in the past, but not this kind of load. So basically the whole launch had to be stopped. We had to basically apologize to the public. And we replaced the app with a new app that took your email address and said, hey, thanks for downloading BBM. When it's ready, we'll let you know. And so then, fast forward a month of lots of changes and fixes and trying to collect these things. We've got this list of 60 million people that have signed up for BBM. Now's the time to start letting them in to the application. And it's my team's job to let them in. We're holding them back. We're throttling through an API, basically, and we can unlock the first 10,000. So we're sitting in a room. I'm a director at this point, and there's about 5 senior vice presidents in the room, like looking over your shoulder and like, okay, let's send the first batch of emails out. And we send out the first batch of emails, and we noticed that our emails start to get throttled. Our team had tested sending emails out through an internal corporate server that didn't have the capacity, started getting flagged for spam, this kind of thing. So disaster number 2 strikes, where we can't get this email out. And so yeah, great experience being at the center of 5 VPs staring over you, saying we're an effing email company. How come we can't get emails out, right? And so what ended up happening is we called in for help. So the team I was on, we called in a company that we used to help us with marketing emails, who had the capacity of sending millions of emails quite easily. And so they helped us. But this pressure and it wasn't a nurturing environment, if you can imagine. At that point, there was a lot of stress, and it started to show. So that was one example of a culture that in extreme stress kind of cracked and didn't sort of step back and think, okay, like we've got to solve the problem now. We'll do the RCA later. And so that was challenging. But
what is your biggest takeaway from it? And as an engineering leader today, what would you do different, or if at all anything?
So obviously, if you have more time and you're thinking, the first time you do something, it's always the hardest. The second time, it's always better. But it's bringing in people that have experience is really, I think, the biggest thing. And that's, a lot of my anecdotes are like calling somebody for help. And it may be a vendor, it may be somebody else in the company, but that's, I think, something that's part of resilience, that we feel like we've got to have all this weight on our own shoulders, but really there's other people out there that can help. We just need to ask for it, and we shouldn't be afraid to do that.
Sounds good. All right, Brian, I remember, operating lean means different things, right? And I know you have experience going through multiple restructuring with one of your previous employers. I think a lot of people here probably have experience going through different restructuring as well. Times are challenging now. We keep hearing about redundancies, layoffs, and things like that. Is restructuring a potential solution to find ways to operate a team in lean times? How does that affect the resiliency of the team if that happens?
Yeah, so I think everyone here probably has either gone through this or is eventually going through that as leaders. I think every company that just makes it eventual time, it will happen. I think every company that has been for long enough has done it several times. I think it's a natural process of it. It's an unfortunate one. It's a normally very stressful one, but it just happens. I don't know. Sometimes these cuts, I think, are done as a way to save costs, and that just gives you with a underlying inertia, right? You're just advancing on what you were doing before, just at a lower cost, and that may give you some time, maybe some months, maybe some quarters, but it's not really advancing anything. I think after all these times I've had it, maybe 5 times or 6 times, it's more like this is an opportunity to challenge what we are doing, what is actually maybe waste in the effort we're putting into the organization, right? Maybe we have teams working not on the most important things for the company in this moment. Maybe we are just solving problems with money because we just raise money, and we have suddenly like a big pile of millions there, and we can use them to throw at problems and just keep advancing. But actually, what we should be doing is to ask ourselves, can we operate better? Can we serve better our customers, right? So in all my processes, basically, the main thing we try to do is how do we exit this moment with a better team, with a more resilient team, with a more robust team, One thing we always do is try to reinforce a lot the whys. We need to make sure the team understands why we do this. We make sure also that along with this why comes a complete explanation and understanding of what the company is doing. So one thing that has happened with all my startups is that all numbers are open, are visible. The team is aware on a daily or weekly basis about the KPIs, but also about the business plan. They understand where we are as a company, and they understand why we try to align the goals towards this particular line of that spreadsheet, right? To the point that you can ask people in the organization, okay, why are we doing this? And they understand and they can relate it to that, right? But you cannot just do it once. You need to repeat this message constantly, right? When you enter in a moment of restructuring, it is the moment of doubling down on this kind of communication so they understand. Because if you don't do it, I think you end up with a team that feels lost, probably fearful that they may be the next ones. And that's the content of being a resilient team, right? So I think it's an opportunity to make the team, stronger, understand better what the company is trying to do, eliminate waste, and I don't mean the people, I mean the tasks that we shouldn't be doing at all. When we grow a lot, it happens that we have a lot of sophistication everywhere to get to the 99.999% of everything. And when we're in a small startup, sometimes you need to apply Pareto in a more drastic way and try to focus the 20% of the effort in the 80-90% of the benefits, right? So make sure that teams get aware of that and can advance on it.
Yeah, and also the why is very important, because map into that global strategy to your departmental strategy, and then to your team strategy. And then if you can explain why are we doing this at a team level and then map it to that global strategy, I think that makes a lot of difference. We are also getting some questions from the audience here, so we'll try to accommodate those as we go along. The first question is very important. When you say operate in lean, everybody suddenly thinks about laying off a lot of people, right? How does it actually impact the team morale or the quality of the product, whatever it is, right? The team morale is a big issue with a lot of things. So anybody can pick up that question.
Yeah, I can jump in. Just extending the BlackBerry analogy to now at Skywatch, when there is a problem and that could maybe affect product quality, we have what we call a just culture. And so if you're familiar with that term, really it's about understanding what happens when something goes wrong. It's not about placing blame or firing somebody. And the word accountability is used a lot, but it's not really understood that it came from actually the US Navy, and the root is to give an account. So an account is what happened, and understanding what happened is the most important thing. So the analogy of, in healthcare, for example, if a nurse goes and gives a patient the wrong medicine and it ends up killing them, that's obviously terrible. So the nurse could do one thing. They could say, I'm going to cover that up. I'm not going to tell anybody what I did because I don't want to get fired. But in a just culture, the nurse would say, actually, I went into the pharmacy. These two pills were right next to each other in the same containers, and they looked the same, and I just screwed up. I made a mistake. And so that account means that we can make the system better. And the system being better means that we won't have that problem in the future. And we find that just culture, obviously the benefits for the system are clear, but there's a lot of benefits for morale as well, because then the team isn't afraid to try and do their best, but not hold back or take longer to deliver something because they know it may not be perfect. They know that we're gonna give them that benefit of the doubt. So that really helps a lot with us in terms of morale.
Yeah, not a lot of people may think about near skilling somebody, but we all have messed up in production, haven't we? So you cannot always blame the engineer who has actually messed up, but you have to have a process which makes sure that nobody can go and delete a database in production. So that's the way we should be seeing it. All right. The next question, how do you align expectations with reality when things don't quite go as planned? Any thoughts on that from the team here? Especially when there's a wide gap between reality and expectation. I think, Joel, you slightly mentioned about what happened at BlackBerry. There was an expectation that everything was going to go as planned, but the reality was completely different.
Well, it happens a lot in buildings. It's not technology, but we go fast. I love Pareto, I'm a big fan. So we go 80-20, and I'm control 80% of your design for the building, 20% will go on construction site, and we'll manage it after. So there's a lot of, it didn't go as planned. But again, from my perspective, the design build is the feedback loop that we're able as a team to fix the problem. So it's really hard as a culture to remove the blame game of the construction industry, whose fault has that been? But as you mentioned, the kind of accounting, okay, what is the problem? How do we fix it? And I'm always, mentioning that we go fast, we do mistake, and we value mistakes. And then we can fix the mistakes, but we can go fast. So it's rinse and repeat, always like your job is to make mistake. If there's no mistake at the end of the year, and now I have a kind of a pocket of provisionary money to fix F up on construction, and I'm like, if that pocket is empty, like somebody's like lying or covering up, or because, we're a construction company, there must have been some mistake that we've done. And I go dig it, and I don't want to say I celebrate it, but I try to make it okay in a culture for people to go fast, make mistakes, and everybody fix it.
Yeah, and also have some kind of a retrospective, right? I mean, to see what actually happened. Why is there a big difference between the reality and the expectation? And not to blame anybody, but to make sure that the next time that doesn't happen, right? Brian, I'll come back to you. I remember we talked a lot about KPIs and OKRs, et cetera, and how you actually reduce the amount of KPIs you have in your company and moved from having global OKRs into team OKRs into global OKRs and reduce the silos that existed between the teams. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so like in the end, when you're growing, it happens that your teams grow and everything gets more sophisticated. No, a little bit what I mentioned before. The way we have historically measured what we do in the company is based on OKRs. The way we set the objectives, for everyone is through that. And what we ended up having always is like, very big team, 400 people. It's happening in my previous company, right? And then you have hyper-local objectives per team and eventually even per person, right? And that's a huge overhead. That's very complicated to nail. At least in my experience. I'm pretty sure there are managers out there that can do it, but I think it's extremely challenging. And the thing is that you need to focus the efforts on the things that really matter, that drive the organization forward and the objectives, to where they should be as a business, right? So what we were having there is like a lot of hyper-local focus on specific objectives in siloed teams, even in half-siloed individuals, if you want. And it's like, I don't know, I like to put this, imagine these bottles, like you have a lot of deposits of water with communicating pipes. You move some water from one to another and everything just rebalances again. So you are doing a lot of effort locally. You are advancing a lot technically locally. But then when you look at the overall, result, actually it barely moved. Sometimes even moved backward or it just was waste, right? So one of the things that we noticed I think in every single process of this that we went through was that, okay, now it's time to reevaluate what we shouldn't be doing, and simplify. So yeah, from having, 50, 60 KPIs, remember the numbers right now, to 10. And then from having like even one objective per person at some point, or 3, OKRs is from 3 to 5 objectives with 3 to 5 key results per objective. Imagine the amount of things that you need to take care of and measure to just have a few ones that are more like globally set for the whole organization. And then you force teams to align, into solving those. And you discover that this together with bringing more information changes the way an engineer, for example, may think about a problem. It's not anymore how, am I in my goal, but more like how are we doing as a company, They start thinking about gross profit, which maybe doesn't happen that often, right? Because they were super focused locally on their particular KPI in these amazing dashboards, I think that probably one of the mistakes that we made is that we were measuring a lot of things just because we could, but not because they truly mattered.
That's very interesting. I can imagine why the teams would want to work together. Now they have a global objective or OKR. But at the same time, would that cause problems with accountability? Like if things are failing, it's not my team's problem anymore. It's a global problem. So maybe you're shifting the onus onto the leader.
I think it's a risk, but you still have responsibles, right? So I think that you have a smaller organization in this case, or in my case particularly, and then you still have a main responsible one, a main driver of that objective, and then you have the supporters of that objective, and all of them are held accountable for it, right? But yeah, there is still a main supporter a main executor, if you want, of that objective. And we all have to defend what we have been doing during the quarter.
So you have a sponsor for each objective. So
yeah.
that way, yeah, okay, sounds great. Sandrine, I'll come to you. You mentioned about your engineering teams, 40 years of experience, people in your engineering teams. How do you make that happen? Because in the tech industry, it's very difficult to have people working for maybe 4 years continuously, let alone 40 years. How do you make that happen?
I made a joke to Jobin in the practice. I'm like, it's construction, a lot of alcohol, shooters, and that's it. No, it's more complicated than that. I've been an engineer in a company with a problem with authority. Like, I didn't want to say as I've been told to, or do as I've been told to. So I always experienced that. So when I started my own company with my own engineering team, I'm like, oh, that's going to be complicated to make them do what I want. And they're young, so they're even worse than me. They don't want to do anything that I'm saying. So I'm like, I have to rethink. And I was starting fresh, so my little startup made me experience a lot. So I started kind of backwards up. Is like, I asked them, what type of project do you want to do? And I started to implicate them and let them do the strategic session at the end of the year and say, like, what's the KPI? What's the objective here? What do you guys want to do? And once they say it, I had my idea, of course, under my, behind of my head of where I want to go. But most of the time, we work together, we see the same thing. So the answer, is pretty much what I was thinking, but it's coming from them. So it's so easier to motivate and to make a happy team when they feel empowered. And we've heard, many times that in the morning. So now they're in power. They feel really like they're driving their own show. So they want to stay. They actually want to stay. And then once they're really, heard, and then for the older folks, their value is so important in the company. I think sometimes people don't, especially in the construction industry, male dominant, they're like, it's really a tough industry. I'm like, no, we have to acknowledge that this guy value for 15 minutes is more than a new engineer for 3 months of work. And I trust that outcome, that 15 minutes that he's going to go to a building and tell me this is the problem. That's worth millions of money in construction, planning. Imagine all the resources as a society that we save when we have a great brain, finding the real problem and the real quick fix. So as soon as I engaged with that team, that older team and everything, because once I had my startup, we merged with a 98-year-old company, a male-dominant Jewish company. So it was very a cultural clash, I thought. But turns out, no, the great knowledge was there, design build was there, the value was fully aligned. But I made sure I went to see those engineers, and I'm like, oh my God, you're so valuable. They're like, whoa, nobody ever told us that, because they were like negotiating salaries at the end of the year. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna negotiate your salary again, but how do we make you happy? And I totally built the engineering team differently, like not looking at books or anything, to make sure that those great brains are comfortable and they don't do retirement. So I went to great lengths to implicate their family, their lifestyle, to make sure that they shine large. We go to conference around the world. Like, they were like, oh my God, this is so expensive. I'm like, yeah, but it's more expensive to lose you. So it's always, there's a money wise to it. There's a money way to promote knowledge and experience. So it's always that balance. And I try to really, make that team as happy as possible. And the young people that I'm putting under those, 40 years old, to make the 40 years old like comfortable at night, no phone calls, no calculation. Well, the young ones are, are taught and trained by those mentors. So the link is really strong. And then the young ones are very, they get very close to their mentor. They don't want to leave either. So that young generation that is sometimes hard to kind of link or attach to a culture, when you go to one-on-one with experience, they see it and they're like, I want to be that guy. Like, this guy is so powerful when he comes to a room. I want to be that guy. I'm like, perfect. Let's, craft you into become that guy, and I will, acknowledge what you want to be and how to get there.
Yeah, I think secret is empowerment. I think even Rob was in his previous session talking about empowering our teams, and empowered teams do better than anybody else. So that's a wonderful takeaway for the team here. So speaking about people, Melissa, you mentioned about working with contractors quite a bit. Is that one way to scale as you need, and going through lean times, working with contractors? Is that another idea that people can try out? And what's your experience? I mean, is it difficult working with contractors?
It can be. It depends who and in what area, and then how you integrate them. It's a relatively new thing for our group. I think it's something we started leaning to a year ago, and we've had good and bad experiences. But I think the way that we've approached it is we like to take a more embedded approach. I think that's really important when you do have a remote team, because they do need to integrate with your processes that are in place. They need to work with your people. We do tend to utilize them more in spaces where we don't already have those internal skill sets, so we don't have the time to onboard someone to them. But we don't also, like mobile apps is a newer area for us, so we don't have that expertise on our teams. So we bring in contractors to do that. But we have a lot of people who do want to learn skills in building mobile apps, and I don't want to say to those people, you can't do this, you don't have the time. So we end up bringing in a lot of contractors who are leads, tech leads, so that we can pair them with people and you can work alongside them, so these other engineers can learn in step with them at the same time, while still knowing I have to finish this migration, which is critical to our roadmap, but I can still work alongside and learn from these other people. And then try and treat them as part of your team as much as possible. And it's also a growth opportunity for some leads who do want to take the chance and try and project manage them. They don't necessarily want to be engineering managers, but they do want to be tech leads, and you can integrate them into that whole process. And so far, it's been working well for us.
Okay. I do see a similar question. What advice would you give to a new CTO stepping onto a cost-conscious organization that still wants to grow? Maybe contracting is an opportunity there?
That's one of those in a big umbrella of things. I'll speak to my personal experience on this one, because I am relatively new in leading the org. So it's been maybe like a year and a half to 2 years since I started this. Really learn to love spreadsheets, learn to love budgets, dive into everything, fall in love with the microeconomies of AWS and GCP and all of your cloud platform providers. It is a game. Treat it that way in your head. Get in there and look at the shenanigans that you can do to find money, to optimize the costs in certain places. Lean on your teams and that are already in those systems and have a really deep knowledge of how they can optimize. They probably already have all these ideas, these wish lists they've wanted to do for these unsexy projects that get overlooked by product orgs. We're like, I want to optimize here. I could cut costs here. I could improve performance here. And usually all of that synergizes in a way that is better for your budget sheet. But you really have to take 3 to 4 months and say, I'm going to become the expert in all of these things. And no one is going to tell you to do it. So you have to go find all of the pockets that hit your budget. And sometimes that is freelancers, contractors, that are lines in there too, as well as your infrastructure. And you have to take ownership of that and really learn to love it. It will be rewarding. And what I have found, if you get a team of engineers together who also have the knowledge and enjoy that, you can see immediate progress and outcomes from that when someone makes a change, and then suddenly you're saving the company thousands of dollars a month, and they can put that on their performance review. It's a very tangible thing to them, and engineers like to solve those types of problems.
We're slowly running out of time, and I see a lot of questions coming in, but no discussion in 2025 shouldn't end without speaking about artificial intelligence, right? Quick question to you, Joel. Operating lean, will AI play a part in it? If so, is automation the rule of the game? How does that help?
Yeah, I think you're probably maybe the second question, or the one at the top now. When resources are constrained, how do you balance that need to deliver? And it's sort of, to me, a good Canadian analogy is like the first time you ever drove a snowblower, if you had that opportunity. I used to shovel, now I have a snowblower. Things are like, I look forward to it now. And that's a tool, right? That's not a robot cleaning your driveway, it's a tool. So for us, we lean in as much as possible to AI tools right now. Obviously, the landscape's changing very quickly, but our rule is anybody can try anything that they want. We've got to do some vetting for privacy and security, of course, but things like Copilot, obviously, other coding tools like there's Cursor, for example, and then also like code reviews for as well. So we use all these to try and make people's lives easier. Instead of hammers and screwdrivers, we're giving them nail guns and drills and snowblowers. And so that's the idea, is that AI is not going to take your job. A person using AI is going to take your job. So we think that that's really the future. The more we can lean into that, I think the better.
At 20 seconds, so let's go 10 seconds. What's your biggest takeaway for the audience here, if you want to operate lean and build a resilient engineering team?
10 seconds, like empathy and yes, drills and snowblower. and for resiliency of a team, like having all those nitty-gritty tasks, like boring tasks removed by tools, it's very important. And then for engineering, mechanical engineers anyway, I have to force the tool down to them. They don't believe in them. But we have to be constant. So the CTO role is not anymore to acknowledge technology within the business, but it's acknowledging technology outside to make my team better.
That's another way of empowerment. Nice.
Transparency. Start now. You will thank yourself in 6 months when you have to explain that gap between the expectations and reality. You've already done it. You've been doing it. You've been telling that story. And then it's much, much easier if you've been transparent about how things are changing for the worse, hopefully for the better, the whole time.
Yeah, I'd say find out what people love to do, as you mentioned earlier, and then find out what they really don't like to do, and then hire people that love to do the things that those people don't like to do. And now you've got a team that really can fire on all cylinders.
Brilliant.
I will say say no a lot, even more than before. Learn the PNL as the back of your hand. Don't obsess over it, but really make it your tool and take it as a game. And what else could I say here? Simplify. Simplify things. Figure out what things you are doing at your organization that probably shouldn't be done anymore, and feel free to and really empowered to just remove them. There will be time to go back to them if they actually matter.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot for the wonderful panel here. A big round of applause for them. Thank you.